Hello, hello. Today I have my friend and fellow military spouse, Kasie Purvis, joining us today. Kasie and I are going to dive into the topic of reimagining yourself after a big change. So, as we all know, it goes without saying, military is full of not just changes, but big changes. And Kasie herself has just gone through a big change with a PCS move or permanent change of station with her family. So, without further ado, we are going to dive into the topic. Thank you, Kasie, so much for agreeing to come and talk to us today. Why don't you just start by introducing yourself?
Hi, everyone, and thank you so much, Heather, for having me on today. It's a
Absolutely.
pleasure to even be on here, so thank you. My name is Kasie Purvis, like she said, and I have a podcast called Gather the Scattered, and that's where I have topics where it I share topics to help people move into communities and help them find their people along the way. So it has just been something that I have truly enjoyed doing. We are an active duty family as well. And we've been on active duty probably about 7 years now. And it was not that was not our goal at the time. We didn't start off that way. In our 30s, I felt like we needed a job change, and the call to active program came up. So that's where if you're National Guard, you can go to active, and there's a program that will transition you, and that's how we got on active duty. And so we are in Georgia right now and loving the sunshine. It's beautiful weather.
Nice. Yeah. And I'm next door in Alabama. So we are definitely enjoying that same kind of weather.
Yes.
So I cannot complain. Earlier in the year, I was definitely complaining. Not
Right.
earlier in the year, no, just a couple months ago, I was complaining about the weather. But right now,
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, because
Yeah, I
y'all
love
get
that.
snow too and all that kind of different stuff.
We do, but I mean, it's snow in Alabama. It's not like it
I
stays,
know.
right? I mean,
True.
we're getting off topic, but that's fine. Thank you so much for introducing you and for your family's service, of course. And I will tell you, I think part of your story, that part where you're like, this wasn't the plan to be active duty, for this amount of time, I think most people relate to that. Most
Oh, yeah.
people don't go into the army going, I think I'll do 20 years here. Now, some do. Or,
Oh, yeah.
not just the army, but, any branch of service. And some do, but so many just stay with
Right.
never having had that intention. So that's so relatable.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I didn't mention this myself, but I am a veteran also. And so I knew going in that it was not going to be a 20-year thing.
Yeah.
I wanted them to pay for college and to get certain life experiences, and
Mm.
they gave me all of those things, and I gave them the 6 years, and that was it.
You and I have talked about this before outside of here, but same. Little over 6 years for me, but that's only because I was deployed at the end of my 6 years. And so it was just stretched out a little bit. But I
Right.
knew mine was going to be 6 years. And I think I almost knew that with my whole heart, but I still wonder, had I not met my husband and been
Yeah.
dating in a situation where the Army couldn't put us at our next duty station
Mm.
together, would that have changed my mind? I think no,
Yeah.
but I think most people say no until they make
Right.
the decision. So I don't know.
Right. Well, and if you've never looked back, you probably don't. You probably wouldn't have. Like if
Yeah.
you've not like right now, like do you feel like looking back, you're like, I probably should have stayed. Have you ever felt like that?
No,
Okay, then you
no.
made
And I was watching a TV show the other day, and I wish I could quote the guy exactly because it was such a brilliant quote. I'm like, that is 100% how I feel. But he's former military, of course. But essentially, it was going into the army was one of the best decisions I've ever made. And getting out of it wasn't the army for him. I actually think it was the Navy, but that's besides the point. Getting out of the military was one of the best decisions I've ever made.
oh right.
So,
I mean, that's pretty good. I like that. I'm gonna
yeah.
use that. I'm gonna
It's
use
good. Yeah, it's relatable. Okay, so you just had, you mentioned a major life shift, which is kind of what we're going to focus on talking about today.
yes.
It's been a long time since I had a major life shift like that. So I'm so grateful that you are going to kind of carry this conversation here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about how these major life shifts impact military life, military spouses, military families, all the things.
Right. Yeah. So each time you move, there could be opportunities where it was on your top three. That's not kind of like the thing anymore.
Mm.
The military has really kind of changed out of like the top three thing now, and it's more like an interview process. Just for anybody that's not listening, it's just different. And so everybody at some point might have gotten to a place that they really want to be, but there's probably more times than not where you've gotten to places that you never thought of or you never wanted to be, and different things like that. And you start getting into, and so when you move there, it's a culture shock, and it's a big change, because what your culture is that maybe you were used to before is now completely opposite. And so, like, for example, like when we moved from Alabama to North Carolina. I don't think I'd had ever been in some major big city before. So on our way to drive to North Carolina, we went through Atlanta with a ton of lights. I mean, the place was booming. I've never seen something like such a big city like booming at night. I was like, it's 10 o'clock at night. Why are there so many people on the road still? Like, I just wasn't used to it. And so I was like, Justin, my husband, I was like, Justin, did you make a wrong turn? Like, there's no way. We are not in Atlanta. We are in New York City. And he was like, no, we're not. We're on the right track. Okay. So anyway, so we get there, and this was the first time I had ever lived in a big neighborhood before. I'd never lived in a neighborhood before. Right. And I walk out of our home, and all I can see is houses, and I'm used to living on some land. And this is just a big culture shock for me. And so you sit there and you think, okay, how do I combat this? How do I combat this culture shock to where, I embrace it and I don't let it suck me, and I don't let it, take me back. I don't want it to leave me inside. I want to embrace it,
Yeah.
And so I thought about, like, how do I actually do that? How do I immerse myself into this new transient culture instead of the rural culture I was used to basically my whole life? And so, so there was three things that I think that really helped me go through a big change and really helped me through each change going forward. And so, because I feel like if you don't embrace or you don't adapt a mentality to change, you're going to get stuck.
100%. And it can be miserable. You can learn to thrive, which I think is part of what you're going to share with us in a second.
Yeah.
Or you can survive just because you have to. What else are you going to do? You're there. And so but it's just not the way to go if there's another way.
Right.
Might as well enjoy, even if it's not the place you wanted to be, even if getting there, everything is different. There's no reason why we can't make the most of it.
Oh, I absolutely, absolutely. But it's so hard to accept that at first, and I think in your 30s, like for us in our 30s, I'm like, man, like I'm
not in my 30s, but okay, keep going.
But at the time, like I was like, how do I do this? I've been doing something and been involved in a culture and around my family my whole life, and now I have to learn how to do family all over again. That's not family. You know what I mean? I have to find these people.
Yeah.
And so one thing that I definitely think, the first thing I'll share with you is that I had to grieve the change that I left to the change that I had just encountered. Yeah. I had to grieve that. I had to shed off all the ways of thinking that I probably had before, like, for example, trash cans. I know this is going to sound weird. I know it's going to sound so different, but like we had never had a recycling can before, right? We had never had, and I say that not to be funny, but I'm saying that because it wasn't an option for us. The nearest recycling plant was an hour away from us. It was not convenient. So it was just not. So, like adapting, like grieving and leaving those things behind
Mhm.
so that I could really find the joy and the newness of the joy and the things that I was experiencing. I really had to leave a lot of those things behind.
Yeah.
But I think what was so beautiful about that is that it was because it was so new, I wanted it more. I think when, you see, like, let's not go in to buy new clothes, the
Yeah.
new trend, right?
Yeah.
You want to go do that and you want that. So I was experiencing restaurants and foods that I'd never had before. And so I think grieving the things that you're used to is so important to enjoy what's in front of you.
Yeah. I love that. I think that's absolutely a brilliant first tip because, of course, we want to make the most of it. But if you don't acknowledge that you are in a grieving period, you're
Mm-hmm.
missing the friends that you made. You're missing the community that you built. You're missing the comfort of everything you grew to know over
Yeah.
that time. And
Mm-hmm.
now you're completely immersed in all new things all the way around you, and every one of your family members is. So there's nothing old and comfortable except for within your household, just with your own family. And that
Yeah.
is big and that is scary. And so allowing yourself to grieve what you had to leave behind
Mm-hmm.
and your old life
Yes.
can make space for those other new things as they come up. But if we're carrying that grief and we're not processing it,
Yep.
and we're carrying that heaviness with us and we're not doing us or our family, any kind of a service. So absolutely brilliant. Thank you for that.
Yes. And so the second thing that I would share is to really know what your strengths and what your weaknesses are.
Mm.
Because if you know your strengths, those can help lead you after you're grieving and after you're leaving all that stuff behind. It can help lead you into like even in social situations, right? Like if you're introverted or you're extroverted, those things can, if you know that about yourself,
Mhm.
then that can help you when you're looking to find new friends, when you're going to a bunco group, when you're going to whatever it may be. And everybody really has a strength and a weakness that they can kind of they can bring to a community, a new community, especially your strengths.
Yeah.
You can bring a certain special thing to a community and that be your thing. So for example, I have a someone in our neighborhood right now, and I think everybody has a certain community love language. And this person's strength is that right now she is putting up these skeletons. Right, there's these skeletons that she puts up every year. Like I'm not talking like one or two skeletons they move around. This is like a production. Okay, the skeleton went to the moon last night. There was a NASA rocket. I woke up they change this every single day.
Wow. Talk about
It's
creativity,
it's
right?
so much creativity. I mean, it's really is a production. I've shared it on my social media before. It is that, and I've been sharing them every day that she puts them on. And so, anyways, and today they went on a night dive. Okay, the skeletons went scuba diving. So anyway, but what is so wonderful about that is whenever I am taking a walk by that house,
Mhm.
I'm seeing cars stopping. I'm seeing people laughing. I'm seeing people smiling. And so the other day I actually met the lady that does that for the first time that does the skeletons. And she's like, and the one thing I'll never forget her saying is that the number one people who appreciate it the most are military. And so, that warmed my heart because to me, that is her strength of a way of communicating with her community. It's another way of showing love. It's another way of showing that someone that they care and that they want to bring the community together. That's just a good way of a strength. Like some people are just bakers.
Yeah.
I am not a baker. Some people are really good cookers and different things like that. Or some people are just a good person to have as a listening ear.
Mhm. Yeah. Such a beautiful tip. Man, I feel like I could dive into that. I don't really even know where to start though. I think that The thing about introverts and extroverts really stood out to me because I actually just had a conversation. It's funny, it wasn't this topic. It was another military wife that I had a conversation with, like I think it was last week, on the topic of resilience. But
Mm,
believe it or not, it's almost like the same things coming back up. And so I think what's important to highlight here is that these things are important. And if it's
mm.
any kind of a reassurance between you and her, you all don't know each other as far as I know.
No,
And I didn't come up with these topics, you all did. So to hear both of you talking about this, there is
Mhm.
something here to be gleaned. Like, take it, listen to it. If this is
Right,
your phase of life or you're going to be going into a major transition, these are the things that keep coming up as topics of importance, things to really, consider as you're doing
right.
these major changes. So
Well, because
that's all I have to say about that.
they all point back to you because it has to start with you.
Yes.
You know, it can't start with anybody else but you because you're the person that's going through the major change, and you're the only person that knows how you know you're going to deal with that, how you're feeling. You know, and so I think that's probably why those come up. Maybe why those come up because it just affects people. You know, and probably in the same ways. And so, like my last thing that I think that I feel like really grounded me is really knowing my values. Like, what are my core values that will never change about me?
Mhm.
Right. And that cannot, you can't, that cannot sway. It just makes me who I am. It's a part of me. And knowing those core values will help you stay grounded in any different community that you move into. Like, I will be a diehard Alabama fan through and through. That is one of my values. That's
I'm
not
not
going to
gonna
change.
fight you on this. I'm not gonna argue because I did not grow up in Alabama. While I live here, I did not grow up here. So if you ask me any day of the week, I'm gonna give you New York teams. So,
Right? There you go. Everybody's got that core value. We live in Georgia, okay?
mhm.
And I won't go into football, but I'm going to say this. We beat Georgia, okay? Alabama beat Georgia. But anyways, so but keeping that's just a small thing
Yeah,
that I know that other people can relate to as well. That's a small thing that I've carried around me in each different place that is going to stay true to me.
yeah,
And knowing what you or whoever it may be listening to this YouTube, you have to know what it is that will not change
yeah.
about you and that stays true to you. And I think that can help you move into a new community and help you stay a little less fearful of it because you know who you are.
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a beautiful point. Like for me, I know no matter where I go, what I do, at the core of it is the desire to make other people feel included, accepted, like having somebody stand by themselves when there's a whole group of people that could bring them in to that group doesn't make sense to me. Come
Right.
be a part of it. You don't even have to have part of the conversation. If you don't know us yet, you're uncomfortable, just come
Yeah.
stand with us, and that is okay. Um,
Yeah.
I will always show up. So the same thing goes for animals too with me.
Oh,
I'm one of those people. Yeah, hardcore, make sure people are taken care of and make sure that animals are taken care of. And you, just like you said, knowing that about yourself, whatever it is for you as an individual, taking that everywhere you go, you have an in with that community. Now, I know that when we go back to like introvert and extrovert, it's a little bit of a different story, right? Because as an extrovert,
yeah.
I know that like somebody wearing a Syracuse shirt walking around, I'm going to be like, hey, I'm from Syracuse. I'm going to spark a conversation. But I know somebody who's more introverted. And now I know introvert, extrovert, that's not about being shy socially or anything like that. That's more about, how your energy is spent and received. But
Right.
I do think that people who are introvert, at least from my experience, my husband is extraordinarily introverted. And so they
Mine
don't
too.
tend to just start a conversation that they may not really want to engage in because they have to reserve their energy for the things that
Right.
are most important to them. In that
Absolutely.
case, I don't know if you have any insight on that. I know that I'm a little bit clueless around, that.
On
Did you have
introversion.
any? Yeah, how would maybe an introvert engage knowing that they have to be very particular about where they spend their energy?
So it's so funny. I'm glad that you brought this up because when I was working full time,
Mhm.
I entered into a department where everybody was pretty much 99% of everyone was there was introverted and I was extroverted. And so my desk was was removed from everybody else's. Like I sat the farthest away, right? And so I would walk into work and I was wondering why it was so quiet. Like, why is it so quiet? Because I'm not a very, I know people don't know me personally, but I am not a very quiet person at all whatsoever. I have a very loud voice, I think.
Yeah,
Well, people
me
tell me
too.
that. I don't know anything different, but people tell me I just have a very loud voice, and that's okay. So, anyways, I walk in and I'm wondering why it's so quiet. And then the next thing I started noticing is that people would walk by my desk, but they wouldn't make eye contact. And I'm like, holy moly, what is going on here? Like,
Why
I
don't
know
you like me?
I'm an approachable person. Okay. It's basically like I have smile at me on my face, and then I'm going to talk to you.
Yeah.
And so I was like, what is going on here? But as I grew to understand, pay attention to, and respect
Yeah.
the differences between me and them, because I'm like, okay, I am the odd one here, right? I mean, and not in a bad way, but my personality is clearly different than theirs.
Yeah.
But I want to respect them. So maybe if they don't feel comfortable coming to me, I'm just going to go to them. And so when I started doing that, and each morning I would go to them, and then we all started talking, and then you couldn't shut us up,
Yeah.
because you just have to really get to know people and they have to get to know you. And just because someone doesn't look you in the eye, because maybe they're introverted or maybe they're looking down at their feet or whatever it is,
Mhm.
doesn't mean they don't like you. It's just maybe that they're uncomfortable, and you get to choose if you want to if you want to engage them and make them feel comfortable, because that may be something that they just need, but you just have to respect it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the main advice, is like, you just have to respect it. Don't take it personal,
Right.
because if I would have taken it personal, I would have missed out on so many friendships
Yeah.
and so many great people that I would have regretted it. And so that's definitely my biggest advice.
That's such great advice. I would add one thing to that. And I think I want to say it goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyways because that's who I am. I
Yeah,
have a very good friend that I used to walk with, and tends to be pretty introverted. And she is gratefully very aware of when she's like, I have exerted all of the energy that I have to give right now. It's time for me to recharge. And so
right.
we would be out and we'd both be chatting, probably more me than her, just chatting away. And at some point she'd go, I gotta go in, I'm done. And
Right.
so as introverts, we have to respect when they set that boundary, hope that they're open to setting that boundary, or maybe even be like, hey, when you're done, let me know. Like,
Right.
just let me know. I
Yeah.
may not get the cue because my energy is to go, go, go. When you're ready to call it, let's call it. But respect that boundary. Don't, oh, 5 more minutes, or, don't try to encourage them to be on your level of energy. If they're spent, respect that they're spent. And
Right.
yeah.
It's true though, because that's, to your point, one thing that some of them did tell me, or one of my friends that I made in that department told me, they said, Kasie, if I am standing here talking to you,
Mhm.
it's because I value your time and I value you as a person, because it takes a lot out of me to go talk to people, or to go talk to, or to have conversations and things like that. So, and so that's what she said. She's like, hey, as an introvert, if someone is talking to you, it's because they value you as a person and they want to be around you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Beautiful. Okay. Let's talk about tip 3.
Okay. Yeah. So that was number 3, was knowing your values.
Oh, okay. We kind of just glided into it.
Do what now?
We kind of just glided into it.
Yeah.
I think naturally. Yeah.
So the
Mhm.
top three tips that I provided were to grieve over the situation you left, so that you can embrace the new change and community that you're in. And number two was to know your strengths and your weaknesses
Hmm.
and know how those can either work against you or work for you. And so really just spend some time on yourself, even if you have to write it down. And number three was to know your core values, to know what is super important to you, what won't change, where you cannot sway left or right. You have to know what it is that is important to you and what you value most about yourself. It can even be what you value most about your family and just things that are going to keep you grounded when things change.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for, and I was with you, but my brain was not counting along.
Because we got caught up in the conversation because we just enjoy talking to each other.
It's how it's a good conversation. You get lost in it. It's always a
Yeah,
good conversation when we chat. I'm glad that we can share this with other people, though, so that, they can, get some of the goodness that comes out of these conversations.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Ab-
So now we talked about reimagining yourself with a big change. And
yeah.
we've talked about we really focused on kind of like big moves, like PCS moves. That's a major thing, of course, for any active duty service member, less frequently reserves or National Guard, just depends on the situation, but active duty, that's life.
Oh, for sure.
Um, have you all, now I don't remember, have you all had any deployments as a family?
We have. So our
Okay.
last duty station, I think, was probably our biggest change.
So let's
And
talk about that a little bit because you and I can both relate on that. We've experienced deployments with our service member, as a whole family. Let's
oh,
talk about that a little bit.
yeah. So when we moved to our last duty station, I felt like I was working a job that I was able to transfer with my husband's PCS.
That's awesome.
And it was great. It was really great. I really loved that job. It was my dream job. And so I'd held that job for 10 years. And that, knowing that I was going to have to leave that job, and it wasn't forceful, I just knew in my heart that I needed that my husband's job was going to be so heavily traveled that we didn't know going into,
Yeah.
but we knew when we got there that this was going to be pretty big deal. I knew at that point that I was going to have to step away, and that was really really hard. That was really hard to admit to myself, and it was really hard because I had been working full time for 10 years and not and so and work and so going from such a drastic change from working from home, I mean, from working to working from home as a stay-at-home mom, and then 3 weeks later, my husband deploys. There was so much change that happened right there that it was pretty remarkable. It was pretty remarkable. It was tough. It was really tough. And being brand new, you know this,
Mhm.
being brand new to a community. I mean, you can't find close friendships in 7 months. Those take time.
They do take time. Now, can you find friendships in a community that you can lean into? Absolutely. But the level
Yeah,
of trust that it takes to really let your guard down and become vulnerable, and it's going to vary from person to person, of course. But yeah, relationships take time to build.
they do. Well, I mean, there's a trust factor. You got to be able to
Mhm.
trust, you have to be able to trust this person, because when you're friends, you're sharing things with each other, you're sharing experiences, different things like that.
Yeah.
So that was huge. That was huge for me. But I did feel very blessed um with people, with neighbors. Like our neighbors really took care of us during that time. And it was unprompted. There's something so special when someone can really see a need without you saying it.
Yes.
You know, it's just such a beautiful time. So he deployed for 4 months at that point in time. He came back, broke his arm, and
Boy.
unfortunately, I know it was so unfortunate. So he broke his arm,
Mm.
and then he took a position where he was having to travel overseas for a week or two every month.
Mhm.
And so he did that for a year. And then, so he ended that in December of last year. And then this year in January, he went to a 4 month military school. He was basically gone. over a year out of 3 years, once you add it all together,
Yeah.
And so that was a really, really big change. But I think that with those three things that I shared with you are what really helped me through that, and just recognizing those things.
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that. It made me think of something kind of on the topic of big changes, right? Because you and I are both Army veterans.
Yes.
And our my husband's retired now, but our husbands both served as well. And what comes to mind is for me, one of the biggest changes I made was from going from being a soldier, being
Yes.
the doer,
Yes.
being, all of the things that comes along with that to step by step, a little bit. There was a few steps in between where I went and, did a 9 to 5 in the civilian sector kind of thing. But essentially going from being the service member, being the whatever you want to call it, the doer, right?
Yeah. Sure.
And to being a homemaker. Don't get it twisted. I am not saying homemakers are not doers because we have a million things that we kill it at.
Absolutely.
But that is a massive life change. And I think anybody that goes from working, outside the home to becoming a homemaker or, working outside the home to becoming a work at home
Sure.
mom or whatever the case, right? That's a major life change as well. And it takes some reimagining of who you've who you've thought yourself to be, who you've seen yourself as.
Yeah, because
To
you're being this person for the first time,
yes.
you
Yes.
know?
I mean, it's not about the role, right? Who we are, our identity. It's not
Yeah.
about the role we play, but we do identify so deeply with these roles that we think these are our identities. So if I identify as a soldier and then
Right.
I become a service member's wife and a stay-at-home mom,
Yeah.
suddenly, who am I? And that's a giant question to answer. And it can be scary and overwhelming and frustrating and all the things, right? And so taking the time to recognize the soldier was not who I am. It was the thing, or employee of a thing, or whatever the
Yeah.
case, right? It
Sure.
was not who I was, as it was the thing I did. But who was I at the core of that? I was a
Right.
person that did whatever, that got things done, that, made people feel whatever the thing was deep down inside me that is who I am, no matter what I'm doing. That is who you are. And you can move that between roles. So no matter where you're shifting in life, knowing that about yourself, that's kind of what it goes back. You were talking about values, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of that, it goes hand in hand, just knowing what you stand for, who you are, but even more deeply, what your true identity is, right? At the core of all the roles that you play, knowing that about yourself and carrying that from role to role.
It's like you're speaking straight to me because I mean, I know you really are, but
Kind of, yeah. In the audience.
right. But I mean, just to kind of maybe even my soul, maybe. But it's funny that you're saying that because these are things that have really just kind of come up in conversation for me personally with me and my husband, some of my friends, and just myself. I mean, me just talking to myself, right? And so because the one thing that I noticed about even the jobs before I had that 10-year career, one of the things that I know is that I have to be in some type of way where I'm serving people
Yeah.
and where I'm bringing them together and where I share that with you, Heather. Like I want to be able to bring people together and nobody feel left out. I mean,
Yeah.
because as military spouses, sometimes you can feel that way. You can move into a new area where everybody knows everybody. They've all grown up in high school together. They all went to college together. They have no room for us,
Yeah.
right? They have no room for us. And so I know that those are some of the things that I value about serving people in general.
Mhm.
And I want to continue that. And there's a lot of ways that I'm in the future that are the things that I have working that I want to continue to do that. But even like with my podcast, that is somewhere where I feel like I'm serving each week, and I know that you feel this way too with being on YouTube, right? And this, like, I've seen a lot of your stuff. I mean, it encourages me too. And I love all the aha moments. I'm like, oh, yeah, I can relate to that. It's relatable.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. And absolutely, when we create these communities, even though they're not like, when we talk about community, that can be the people that you physically go spend time with, have coffee with, do,
Mhm.
outside activities with, but that can also be um kind of virtual, if you will, whether you're doing networking in like a face-to-face with a screen in between you kind of situation, or if you're just listening to podcasts and YouTubes in a community of people who get you, who
Right.
are living a similar life experience, whatnot. So those are means to a community, to connecting with somebody, even if, that's your temporary stepping stone where you're really inside of a community in your location, right? But
Absolutely.
yeah. Okay. So we've just got a couple minutes here to wrap up. So I want to leave a little bit of time for you to share final thoughts and then where people can connect with you if they wanted to connect with you further. So are there any final thoughts that you wanted to share today?
I think we really hit a lot of things that I enjoy sharing. Something that I also would share with someone that may be going through a new change is just to find some humor in some of it, find some humor in all of it. I love to laugh and I love to
Yes.
share funny stories. And whenever and so if you have these funny stories and you have these ways that make you laugh, that means you can share it with somebody else and they can laugh.
Yeah.
So I think that that's another way of just really being able to get in, to be able to go through a big change, is just finding some humor in some things.
I love that. Perfect. Perfect. And I think I love it because I relate to it so much. So thank you.
You're
Okay.
welcome.
If people want to connect with you, where can they do that?
Okay, so all of social media, I am at We Are the Scattered, because we're all the scattered. We're scattered all over the place, right? Even United States or overseas, we're all scattered. And so, but my podcast is also called Gather the Scattered.
Okay.
So,
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here.
absolutely. Thank you so much, Heather. I enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Okay. Take care.
Yep, you too.
Thank you.